You're tired. I lost the sausage 3 bars ago.
Welcome to the Lovecraft eZine podcast. It's March 24th, 2019. Kelly? What's Kelly doing here? Kelly Young. Wow.
Kelly who?
I feel so blessed to have you on the show. God is smiling down on me, you know? So, all right. So our guest today is Josh Demarest. I'm saying that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, with Gallows Hill magazine. And then after we talk to Josh, we're going to talk about Twilight Zone. So let's do introductions, and let's start with the prize. Pete, you have a prize, right?
I do have a prize. So a couple episodes ago, Mike gave away a 5-pin set from the Arkham Bazaar.
Oh, cool.
And
they are very cool.
I rarely put my name in.
He just wants you to be jealous.
But I got these from Mike, and I really did appreciate that. But as we went to throw the packaging away, out of the envelope fell an extra pin.
Wow, that's cool.
It's got a little red tinge to it, I think.
For the people who are only listening in their cars or whatever, what is this?
This is a lapel pin. It's a circle with a gold catholoid tentacled monstrosity on a background of dark, almost maroon black, metallic red.
It's very cool looking. It looks like it might have a little bit of a heft to it. Is it light?
It's not. I've had lighter pins.
Yeah.
This is generally considered. This is a quality product.
Right. From
Arkham Bazaar, and so it's an extra one, which I don't need for my vast Lovecraftian pin collection. So yeah, give it away.
All right, we'll do that. I'll tell people how they can do that at the end of the show.
I want that.
Hopefully.
Oh, well, never mind. Kelly wants it. Just edit all this out.
Hopefully, one of you guys will remind me to actually do that this time. I had to add a PS, a postscript, to last week's show, at least to the audio version, because I forgot.
Okay, and since we're giving stuff away, and I've got the floor,
you do?
I'm going to give something else away. I have...
When did I give him the floor? I'm so confused.
I have a vintage, it's my set, Aleister Crowley Thoth Tarot deck. It's complete. It's vintage.
Wow.
I even have the book that goes with it.
Man, put that in with the little pin and send that to me.
And anybody who wants this, I will send it to them.
Holy moly. Oh, so, anyone who randomly wins it.
No, anybody who randomly wins
Anybody who wants this, I will send it to them.
So it's a little dusty, and, I've used it some, but it's still all here, and it's in pretty good shape. So, yeah. If anybody wants...
a nice prize. So we'll give away... We'll make this 2 separate prizes today, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Let's do introductions. Let's start with Ben.
Hi, I'm Ben Handelman. I'm Kelly Young's biggest and only fan.
That's true.
It's so true.
What are you doing with your microphone, Pete? All right. We'll get back to you, Josh. Kelly, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Kelly Young. I am the executive editor of Strange Eons magazine and a co-host of Strange Eons Radio.
Yeah, Strange Eons Radio. I listened to that the other day for the first time. We'll get back to that later.
All right. Okay.
Matt, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Matt Carpenter. Lately, I've been running movie night. We watched The Whisperer in Darkness last night by the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society. Next week, I am going to see about showing some highlights from the 2014 HPL Film Festival.
Yeah, and I appreciate you doing that, Matt, taking over that for me. I really do appreciate that. Pete, you want to introduce yourself?
I am Pete Rollick, author, editor. My most recent book is the volume anthology, The Chromatic Court, featuring stories influenced by the Cthulhu mythos and Robert W. Chambers' King in Yellow, which took a long time to get out, but I'm really, really proud of the contents.
Everyone buy it. It's great.
Hey, we're just supposed to post a review this week?
I said Monday. It's Sunday still.
But you said that...
I said next Monday. I needed time to read it.
No, you don't.
I'll try to do a guy a favor and he just rushes it.
Wow. Really?
Jeez.
Rick, can you hear us now?
Yes.
All right. Can you hear everyone? Or
I heard Pete and
Okay.
I heard Ben.
well, those are probably the only two you really need to hear anyway. So
I'm Rick Lay, and I contributed to the Chromatic
I
Court.
can't hear Rick either.
you can't hear Rick?
Nope.
My God, you two are going to be the death of me.
I can hear everybody, so I'm staying on.
Okay. He says he can hear everybody, so he's staying on. So I don't know if you want to go out and come back in, Pete, or just leave it. I don't know what to do. I'll be honest with you. For those who are wondering what I'm talking about, YouTube Live or Google Hangout or whatever the hell it's calling itself these days is being very, very weird. Josh, you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. My name is Josh Demarest. I am the publisher at Giles Press. We put out a quarterly magazine called Gallows Hill. We do fiction, nonfiction, reviews, interviews, articles. We also have some books that are going to be coming out at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020. So, that is a little bit about what we do, just kind of the really short version.
All right. Well, there's some some cool background that you told me about Giles Press and Gallows Hill. So let's start with Giles Press.
Sure.
How did you come up with that?
Sure. Well, Giles Press is named after historical figure Giles Corey of the Salem witch trials. Only American ever to be pressed to death. It was his punishment for not entering a plea of guilty or not guilty. They basically put a board on top of him and began stacking stones until he confessed. But anytime he was asked for a confession, he only said, "More weight." Eventually, he was killed. So that's kind of an homage to him, Giles Press.
I knew about this, Josh, but the horror of it never really came alive for me until I watched season 4 of Whitechapel, from the BBC. And in the first episode of season 4 of Whitechapel, this old guy is lured into this abandoned building, and this is exactly what happens to him by an unknown person. I don't want to spoil anything. And, he's tied down, spread eagled, and this big boards on him, and he keeps putting weight on him. And it is just, I was watching that, and I was just flinching, man. That is one horrible way to die.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just one of many atrocities that happened during the Salem witch trials.
Yeah.
But for someone, especially an older gentleman, by all accounts, for someone to kind of stare that in the face and just say "more weight," pretty badass. So I definitely wanted to include that.
Yeah, I would be saying less weight.
Me too.
Okay, and so Gallows Hill.
Right, so Gallows Hill is the name of the hill upon which they built the gallows in Salem, where they hung the witches, supposed witches. And that's the name of the quarterly magazine. So everything kind of stems off of that. And as we continue to build more lines, we've got, poetry collection imprint that's going to be active soon. We've got comics that we're looking to fill out. All of those are going to have names that kind of play back to the Salem witch trials.
What sort of horror fiction, or is it general horror? What are you publishing, and what are you looking for from writers who submit?
Sure. We publish pretty much just general fiction, general horror fiction. We do a little bit of dark fantasy, a little bit of dark sci-fi, but mainly it's just straight-laced horror. I am a huge fan of Lovecraft and The King in Yellow. Carcosa mythos is one of the foundational things that got me into horror. So obviously we'll always publish that if it comes. Well, all right, let me not say always publish that. I'll publish anything that's good that comes my way. So those are kind of our main focuses. And like I said, we publish just about everything. We've got poetry, we've got comic books, graphic novels, regular novels, short story collections, in addition to the short stories in the magazine. And every Friday at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, we do a new short story on our website, gallowshillmagazine.com. So that's totally free to the public once a week.
Gallowshillmagazine.com, yeah. I think that's a great combination, offering free fiction as well as the quarterly magazine. So when does the next issue come out? You've had one issue so far, correct?
Right. So we went in to this whole thing October 2017. We put out an issue. It went really well, but it was basically me doing all of the work to put out a magazine, reading, hundreds and hundreds of submissions, writing all the articles, doing all the interviews, and it wasn't really sustainable with having to balance a day job and everything like that.
Yeah, that's
so yeah, it is. So I got some great mentorship by some real pros in the industry, including Richard Chismer of Cemetery Dance. Kind of helped me figure out how to make a sustainable path to publishing. So this is our first issue back. It goes on sale March 31st and will be every quarter from here on out.
Well, yeah, it's a learning experience for sure.
Definitely.
Having done it, and I've moved on to publishing books, but yeah, for years I published a magazine, and it is a lot of work, as well as blog posts, all that kind of stuff. So there's probably very few people that would be a better mentor than Richard Chismar. So
true.
He's actually going to be on this show sometime soon. We just haven't nailed down a date yet for those who are interested in Richard Chismar. All right. So you said the first one's coming out when?
March 31st. So just a few days.
Right. And so it'll be quarterly. You also do a podcast, right?
We are in the process of getting it kicked off. A lot of stuff kind of launching all at once means that we have to kind of focus on getting one thing to market at a time.
Right.
So the podcast is definitely next on our list, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, I imagine so, because I wrote this down from your little, from your episode 0, I think you called it, where you say, we encourage our guests, this is a direct quote, we encourage our guests to get totally inebriated before they come on. So I'm thinking your mentor for the podcast was Kelly Young, I'm assuming.
How dare you? But also I'm available for the podcast.
I'll keep that in mind.
I told him I don't think he wants me on because I have the most useless superpower ever. I can't get drunk anymore. So anyway, yeah. So do you have people lined up yet, or when's the podcast going to start? And what
do have a
take, that kind of thing.
It's going to be very similar to this. Kind of the idea behind it is just kind of a gathering down at the pub, talking about horror and what's going on in the genre. So it'll be a few people together, some of the people on the Gallows Hill team, as well as a couple guests to talk about their books, to pitch what they're working on. We do have a few guests lined up, and we are always looking for more people who want to come on and talk with us and just kind of shoot the breeze about horror.
Well, what's the vehicle? Are you doing like most people do podcasts, record it and then air it later after you edit it, or are you doing it like this with video, or how are you doing it?
You know, originally we were going to do kind of an edit before we put it out there. I think that's especially important when you have people who are consuming alcohol. But at the same time,
probably.
Although at the same time,
I don't do it.
Fair enough. Certainly watching your podcast has shown me some of the charm that doing everything live has.
Charm. I think he's.
Wait, what the hell does that mean?
All of our screw ups.
In a good way. In a good way. I really enjoy it.
Well, I do believe it's time that we got an informal podcast about horror, definitely, because we're way too formal here.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding, of course, and I wish you all the best with your podcast, because I love that. I love that idea. That's kind of what we do here. Like we're all down at the pub talking about horror, that sort of thing. So, but you seem to be encouraging people to drink before they come on, so that you can strip them of their inhibitions and say things that they otherwise might not say.
Sure. I mean, we definitely want to get people's real selves to come out.
Yeah, get them comfortable. Yeah,
get those inhibitions out of the way, and
here, have another drink.
Yeah, exactly. We actually have been planning possibly having Gallows Hill pint glasses for drinking on air, which would be cool.
Oh wow!
Yeah. Something for the future.
Well, so Joshua, why are only Kelly and I drinking right now? Where's your drink?
Right.
I didn't know if this was going to be that kind of show, so I have water. But during the break, if you want, I'll go upstairs and get some scotch.
What break?
There's a break?
There's not a break, obviously. So
yes, you can just hit your mute button and leave anytime you want to get some alcohol.
Sounds like a plan.
My addiction to moonshine is Kelly's fault.
Oh God. I thought I saw the mason jar and the clear liquid. I thought that was what that was. All right. Very good. Funny story about that. Where I live, Dawsonville, Georgia, we have our city hall in the same building as the Georgia NASCAR Hall of Fame and the Moonshine Distillery. They're all in the same building. So you'd enjoy it.
Of course you do. Yeah. And in North Dakota, you can go to like 7-Eleven and buy liquor, ammo, and guns.
Nice.
Always a good
great combo.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that moonshine was just cooked out in personal stills. Otherwise, isn't it just like a distilled liquor? I thought part of the charm was it tasted like gasoline and it came from potato peels.
I mean, I think that's the history of moonshine. I'm certainly no expert.
So, Josh, are you accepting submissions at all times, or just do you cut them off at some point, and then, or how's that work for your magazine?
For now, it's ongoing submissions. Obviously, we're out there every day trying to get new submissions and trying to engage with new authors, talk to the people kind of coming up in horror. At some point, I can't promise it's always going to be ongoing submissions, because at some point it gets just too much. We're not at that point now, and we're not at a point where we think that's going to be the case soon. So for the foreseeable future, it is ongoing submissions.
So for the horror writers listening to this, they just go to gallowshillmagazine.com, and I think you had a submissions tab at the top.
I sure do. We got some submission guidelines up there and a place where you can submit.
Okay. Does it say the other details? Does it tell the other details too? I can't talk today. Payment, that sort of thing. Does it go into
it should. Payment right now is basically just a token payment because it's primarily self-funded. We are doing some fundraising in the next couple months that's going to kick off. And our goal is by the end of the year to get to a per word payment, and then in the next 2 or 3 to get to professional rates of 5 to 6 per word.
I'm glad you're shooting for those goals, and it is hard. It is hard starting out. Well, for really for any independent press, it's hard. Of course, the flip side of that is that the independent press gets a lot out there that wouldn't be published if not for guys like you and other independent publications. So
sure, I think that's where we provide a lot that some of the bigger publications can't necessarily. They can't take as big a risk if they're paying the price that they are for the stories. So,
I'm glad that you're shooting for that goal.
Definitely.
You're going to be doing some fundraising soon, like a Kickstarter or something.
Yep, we're doing a Kickstarter for the 2019-2020 campaign, primarily focused around getting payments up for authors and funding for the book line that's going to be coming out. Everything that we do for the magazine is self-funded, and so it's sustainable as it is now. Obviously, the more that we can bring in, the more that we can pay people, and that's really our first priority, is just getting the people paid what they're worth.
Yeah, well said. When does your Kickstarter begin?
That's going to be launching April 1st, right after the release of the magazine.
Okay, and you're trying to fund for the rest of 2019? With
2019 to 2020, yeah. We'll probably start another one into 2020.
All right, gotcha. Yeah. You and I were talking on the phone when we first began talking to each other a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to have you on because I think the more good independent presses that are out there, the better. I don't see it as competition. I don't think this is a zero-sum game, and I believe that we should all be supporting each other. So I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. Who's going to be in the upcoming issue?
Well, let me grab my handy-dandy copy right here.
There you go.
We've got some articles written by me and a guy who's helping me out a lot, Tyler Jones. We've got some reviews by Brian James Lewis and James Newman, who both of them have just been bedrocks of the team that I've built kind of going forward. We've got fiction by Clay McLeod Chapman, Gary Buller, Edward Ahern, Kev Harrison, and Anthony Ferguson. And all of them are just absolute rock stars of fiction. So I definitely enjoyed reading all of their submissions. We also have poetry by Stephanie Witovich, Kevin Anderson, J.L. Knight, and Susan Snyder. So it's quite a lineup. We definitely focus more on emerging voices in the genre and kind of helping people get their work out there where they may not have that opportunity at some of the bigger publications.
So, this is a lot of work. I found that out for myself. Sure. And so I have to ask, what's your inspiration for starting a magazine like this and the podcast and the Friday fiction and the interviews and so forth? Sure.
Well, it's kind of a twofold answer. One is that I love the fiction. I've always wanted to work with fiction. Unfortunately, I'm not a fantastic writer. I really thought I was, and then I read some of my work, and I'm not. So, that kind of...
Did you send it to yourself anonymously in the mail?
No, you find an old manuscript, and you're like, oh, I remember liking this, and then reading it and being like, ooh.
I've done that. Yikes. I know what you mean.
Yeah, so I've always had more of a gift for the editorial side of things, helping people kind of take their ideas and running with it. And so that kind of led me into publishing as a career. As I was working in putting out a magazine based on economic development in the state of Georgia, I was like, wow, this kind of sucks. Every day, it's pretty dry. So I wanted to go into fiction, and horror has been my favorite genre for a long, long time. So I thought, what the heck? I can put out a magazine. That shouldn't be too hard. Quickly found out that it is. But as I kind of got into it, what sustained me through all of that was the community, honestly, that's sprouted up around Gallows Hill, and also just the larger horror community as a whole. Being a part of a group where writers kind of paradoxically address these horrific things on the page, but are often not horrific themselves. So it's been a really cool community to get to know, and everyone's been incredibly supportive. I think the importance of horror is that it's a way for us to really tangibly approach our inner demons and kind of those base things that scare us, and to kind of get that out in the open. And I think that's a very vulnerable thing for writers to do.
Yeah.
And so just kind of connecting with all that is what has kept me going.
How did you hook up with Richard Chismar, and what kind of give me some examples of the advice he gave you?
Sure.
Obviously, his background is cemetery dance, so I'm sure he had a lot of good advice to offer.
Of course. Big shout out to Rich. I love him. He's a great guy. When we put out our first issue, it was right around the time that Gwendy's Button Box came out, and obviously I had heard of Cemetery Dance. Who hasn't? And to see him writing with Stephen King, I was like, this guy is really just on top of the game right now. So I tweeted at him and was like, hey, you want to be a featured author in my brand new magazine? And by just sheer dumb luck, he was like, yeah, sure. And at that point, I kind of had to make it a reality, because I had now just involved one of the biggest names in horror. So that kind of kept me going. Once we had our interview, it was a great interview, and he kind of was talking me through off the record part of like his story of coming up and making Cemetery Dance. And one of the greatest things he said to me was focus on the writers who are coming up with you. Don't worry about landing the Stephen Kings or the Joe Lansdales or the Brian Keens. That'll come in time. But really focus on supporting a community of writers who are all kind of coming up at the same time, because 15, 20 years from now, when I hopefully am in the position that Cemetery Dance is now, those are the writers who are going to be, really, really doing really well. So
that's good advice.
That was great advice.
And I also want to throw in there, that's a lesson there too, that you actually asked him if he wanted to be interviewed. I like to say that if you never ask, the answer is always no.
Sure.
Sometimes if you ask, the answer is no, but many times more, I've always been surprised with how many times the answer is yes. I just had to ask,
Right.
So
that's definitely the biggest thing that has helped me in all of this, is just kind of asking people, hey, you want to do this? And you're right, it's a numbers game. If you ask 100 people, maybe 90 of them say no, but then you get 10 people who are really awesome and can help you out. And obviously, I don't think that that's quite the statistics that I'm working with. I've found most people in horror to be incredibly helpful, incredibly willing to sit down and talk to you. We've done interviews with Joe Lansdale, was just done Tuesday, Paul Tremblay, Keelan Patrick Burke. So, yeah, I mean, some of the biggest names in the genre are more than willing to sit down and talk with a relative nobody like me, and that is awesome. So,
in the and when we did our video test, you were talking about the interview with Keelan Patrick Burke. What did you guys talk about?
That was actually handled by Tyler Jones. He is our features editor over at Gallows Hill. Mm-hmm. He is one of Tyler's favorite authors, so I let him do the interview. And honestly, I was blown away by the quality of it. It was somewhat a craft discussion. You know, how do you write, stuff like that. It was also kind of touching on why Keelan has decided to, I guess, remain relatively independent, and the importance of that, and what his plans for the future are. So it was a great article. I definitely think it's one of the best pieces in the magazine that's coming out, and I 100% recommend that you get it just for that, if nothing else.
So you've got, if I have this right, you do interviews for the site that people can read for free, but you also do interviews for the quarterly magazine.
That's correct.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
How do people go about signing up for the magazine? Is it a subscription? Do they pay for each issue, or how does that work? Or how?
Sure. Well, obviously, right now, most people I suspect are going to buy each issue. It's just something about a new magazine starting up that we don't quite have the credibility to be selling subscriptions at this point. That's some of the feedback that I've heard anyways. We do offer subscriptions. You're more than welcome to buy them. But right now, I think most of it's going to be basically just buying the issue when it comes out. And that's part of the importance of offering a lot of free stuff, free fiction, free reviews, free interviews, is keeping people kind of engaged with who we are, what we put out, kind of doing the service for the community and putting it in up front, and then saying, hey, you like that, you're probably going to like this as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. How much is each issue?
Right now, the cover price is $10.99 for the first issue. I'm offering some discounts. More than willing to offer a 10% off for anyone who's listening to the podcast once it goes on sale. So I can send you some details about a discount code for your listeners, and we can get them hooked up with that.
Okay. So, all right. So $10.99, and then just give me a rough idea for the listeners to this program, a rough idea of how many fiction stories, you know, how many interviews and other articles, what can they generally expect for each issue?
Sure. So the idea is to do somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 6 fiction stories. Some of that's going to be dictated by space. Obviously, if we have some that are, you know, 800 to 1,000 words, we fit a lot more in than the 5, 6, 7,000 words.
Yeah.
Sure. But we were going to at least do 5 stories. Poetry, we don't get quite as much or quite as regular submissions for poetry. So poetry is going to be as we can put it in. I think it is a wonderful part. Actually, some of my favorite pieces in the whole magazine are in the poetry section. And so I absolutely think we need more people submitting poetry, and dark poetry at that.
You should ask Ann K. Schwader. She was the poet laureate a couple of Necronomicons ago.
Sweet.
Right, Matt? Maybe 2 Necronomicons ago?
Yes, I actually know the name of like 3 or 4 poets, if you're interested, who write dark poetry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when we're done here, Matt can send you his AOL email address. And, this is not a joke.
It's true, but it's not funny.
I think it's funny. Okay, so is this is it like color, black and white? Are there going to be Kindle editions, that sort of thing?
Yep, we're going to have an ebook that's going to be available. It is in color. I don't know how good the quality is going to show up. You know, there are illustrations for every story, both spot illustrations like this, and as well as actual illustrations for every title. My day job is in layout and design for books, magazines, publications like that. So definitely bringing a high design and high production quality to every issue.
Can we get a sneak peek at the cover for those who are watching?
Sure. I don't know how well it's going to come out. It's pretty dark, but you can see a more high quality image on my Twitter feed, on my Instagram feed, stuff like that.
All right. Who did that cover, by the way?
That is an artist who goes by Token. Call him Toe affectionately. He is absolutely one of the best horror artists out there right now. He does a really cool digital linseed oil sort of style of work, and it is, I mean, as soon as he submitted artwork to us back in the 2017 issue, I was like, I gotta stay connected with this guy. And he's done the cover, all the illustrations, and so he is a great asset to us and someone who I cannot emphasize enough how much I appreciate.
Yeah, it's just amazing. I wish I could draw. It just seems so magical to me. And I know it's just a talent like everything else, like writing or being a good podcast host. I wouldn't know how that is either, but yeah, we've had some really great artists over at Lovecraft eZine, and like Nick Gucker and Heather Landry, just to name a couple. Okay, guys, I don't want to hog all the questions. Does anybody have a question for Josh?
I have a question.
Sure.
So I am a huge Clay McLeod Chapman fan, and I have published him a couple of times. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on with him? And are you familiar with his work with Lazaretto and Iron Fist for Marvel and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, I am a huge Clay McLeod Chapman fan. Working with him has been an absolute dream. I'm working with him to kind of establish some of the comics side of what we want to do. The story in this issue is called Baby Carrots. And I don't want to give too much away, but it is certainly a crazy story about a guy who has some evil baby carrots doing evil, nasty things in typical Clay McLeod Chapman style. So it is one of the I mean, obviously I love every story in here, but it is something truly amazing that I got in my submission. So yeah,
Clay McLeod Chapman, if you're a listener and not familiar with him, you probably are if you have seen his short film Late Bloomer, which is very Lovecraftian.
That's who that is.
Yes, it's slightly filthy and amazing. It's just the greatest short Lovecraftian film ever.
NSFW.
Definitely. I would definitely say that for this story as well.
Okay. Anyone else have a question for Josh?
Yeah. So I'm looking. Excuse me. I'm looking outside your window, and the scenery you have back there looks quite amazing.
I'm staring in your window right now, Joshua, and I'm watching you on the podcast.
Right.
And the multiple reflections, man. It's like live, man.
I'm just saying, it looks like something out of like The Wicker Man or something. It's probably great for the work you're doing.
I can't make much out. What are we looking at?
Here is lovely Dawsonville, Georgia. It is the underside of my porch and also a bunch of trees. I definitely live out in the country. You look out my front door, you see cows. So
wait, you're saying that Dawsonville, Georgia is the underside of your porch?
No, I'm saying that the view out of my window is of the underside of my porch.
Yeah, completely different. But now
in Dawsonville, Georgia. Yes.
Yeah, now I have a complete story idea. I have to go.
Oh God!
I'm just saying,
to have Weave World in here.
The underside of your porch looks a lot like a gallows, so it's very fitting in my opinion.
Oh, good point.
I've never had that out of my head.
Well, but look at, I mean,
that's a great point.
You're not wrong.
No, look, I live in Los Angeles. We don't get porches, right? Like I have a tiny balcony, so it looks fantastic to me.
Yeah, I was in Roswell, which is a suburb of Atlanta, working in the middle of the city every day, and I really thought I was going to be a city kid because I grew up in the country in a small town. I thought, hey, city life is for me. It's not small. It's not boring. There's so much to do. And then the traffic. And certainly Atlanta has nothing on LA, but it is still a nightmare. And so about as quickly as I could, I moved right back to the country up in Dawsonville, and I love it. So,
anyone else have a question for Josh? What do you think the percentage is of submissions that you accepted, Josh? Just if you had to make a wild guess.
Oh man.
Is it if you're like me or many others, you had a lot of slush to read?
Yeah, I think at our fastest point, we were getting. My biggest one night total was 100 submissions. So that was a lot. It's thankfully tapered off a little bit. I get maybe 10 or 12 a day. So it does make it hard, seeing as I can publish one a week, 5, maybe 6 in the magazine. And honestly, it was sending out so many rejection letters to amazing authors that made me want to develop some way to publish weekly fiction. Because I was just saying no to too many people who I wanted to say yes to.
Yeah. Well, that's a good problem to have.
Definitely.
As opposed to not enough submissions, for example. So, well, I wish you all the best with Gallows Hill Magazine. Again, it's gallowshillmagazine.com, right?
That's right.
When do you expect there to be a purchase link there for the next issue?
It'll be up March 31st in the morning. I'm in Eastern time.
Okay.
So right around 9 o'clock in the morning, my time.
All right. Okay, before we move on, anyone else have questions for Josh? All right. I guess I'll take that as a no.
You should take that as a no.
I'll take that as a no.
I mean, Josh, what kind of scotch are you talking about when you say you're going to go get some scotch?
That's a man after my
the
own heart.
questions are now.
Benjamin, now that I'm here, you don't have to pretend to be me.
And when you say that you're like going to drink and do the podcast, are we talking a couple of beers, or are we talking 2 beers, 2 shots, 2 wine coolers?
And my question is, are you as the host drinking as well?
Really hope that my mother's not listening to this, but
wait. First of all, are you 21?
I am. I'm 28. So yeah, I will be drinking as well during the podcast. I will only be having probably beer, maybe a bourbon or something like that, because someone has to kind of keep it together.
No, that's not true at all.
You're right. Anarchy. That's the answer.
That's right.
That's what I've been doing wrong. Someone has to keep it together.
I mean, I just like a podcast that I need an Uber home from.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
Well, at least, Pete, you're feeling better this week.
Yes, I'm not in bed.
So for the podcast listeners, only the panelists know this. But after I finished last week's live video cast, almost immediately, my mom, and I know she's watching. Hi, Mom. She sent me a text. Everybody say hi, Mike's mom.
Hi, Mike's mom.
She sends me a link, and she goes, "Is Pete all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think so. Why?" She's like, "Well, he was laying in bed the whole time." And I'm like, "That's how he does it almost every time." I don't know how I rated you sitting in a chair this time, Pete.
Yeah, well, actually, so what you don't know is that and you might know, you might have noticed, your mom shamed me so much. Not only am I at my desk in my chair,
but you actually showered.
Well, yeah, that's, but it was a quick shower. But I've actually rearranged the entire room.
Hey, Pete, even Brandy asked if Pete was okay. So,
She did? Are you serious?
and I'm not even on the podcast. And she was like, is everything okay with Pete?
Did she really, or are you making this up?
I'm not making this up.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Only if I break out the robe
Oh,
and
okay.
snuggle up in it
That's how we really know.
is when I'm sick.
That's when we thank him for coming in on the show, regardless of the fact that he's sick.
Yeah.
So all right.
Josh, we're still waiting to hear about the Scotch here.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Go
Sure.
ahead.
I was thinking Glenlivet, but typically I'm more of a bourbon guy.
Amen.
Oh,
Just stop now, Josh. You had me with Glenlivet. You can only go downhill from
No,
there.
hey, look, I just did a shot of Wild Turkey 101 before the podcast started. So
Great choice.
So, like, literally 3 blocks from my house is the Bacon and Bourbon Festival.
Oh my God.
So, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you got to come down to Dawsonville because we have a moonshine festival every year.
Okay. Well, no, I'm actually in Florida. So,
You have to come
lot-
up to Dawsonville.
I had to come up to Dawsonville. But, yeah, it takes me a lot to get out of Florida because we have a lot of moonshine in Florida.
That's fair.
But, yeah, Georgia is, like, a nice place to go for liquor. So, yeah, I could see that.
So YouTube is being very weird today, and some people aren't hearing others, and we finally got it to just one problem, which is that Rick can't hear Pete. Are you rattling your mic or something, Pete?
Fucking lucky guy.
Yeah. So that's true. So we're gonna soldier on anyway, and hopefully we can make it work. Early reviews are in. Shazam. Supposed to be really, really good. What do you guys think? You guys looking forward to this? No one can hear you shake your head.
I mean, it's big done as a superhero movie, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. But that was in the original concept.
No, it's Superman done as a comedy.
No, it's Superman done as big, But
yeah. But Shazam
I mean,
is.
it's going to be, I don't know how, I don't know what the target audience is, but it's probably pre-adolescent teens or tweens or something. But
this isn't a new thing. I mean, Captain Marvel, what he was originally known as, came out in like the 1940, Rick?
Yes,
right?
It came out in the 40s, and it was even a serial
30s, right?
from Republic Pictures.
Yeah, like a really more popular than Superman at the height of Superman popular. Yeah. And lost a lawsuit filed by DC over how similar he was to Superman, which
they never should have lost.
Yeah.
Because if you look at
and then DC ended up owning Captain Marvel.
But too late, because Marvel used the trademark and got their hands on it to produce the so our current Captain Marvel is like their 7th, maybe 8th one. I'm not sure. And I mean, everyone, you can go look this up on Wikipedia. It's not that exciting, but DC renamed it to Shazam about 8-9 years ago, and here we are.
Here's what I find really funny and ironic. I'm listening to the ones I didn't have, by the way. Thank you, Ben. The graphic audio DC Comics. Or even if you just read DC Comics in the early to mid 2000s, Shazam, Billy Batson's superhero, is referred to as Captain Marvel. So what I think is really funny is that we've got a Captain Marvel movie out right now from Marvel, and we've got Shazam coming out from DC. So these movies will essentially be playing kind of at the same time in movie theaters. A Shazam movie and a Captain Marvel movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, if only we had a Miracle Man movie at the same time.
Oh, that'd be gold. That'd be pure gold. No, and honestly, like DC couldn't call him Captain Marvel in advertising, which is why every series about him since the 1950s has been called Power of Shazam, or there used to be a TV show. You can watching on DC Universe called the Shazam something hours. Shazam Iris.
The Shazam Power Hour.
Thank you. Sorry.
But then it
I
became the
used to watch
Shazam.
it when I was knee high to a grasshopper.
What, Rick?
It became the Shazam ISIS hour because they added a female character called Isis.
And but the character was still known as Captain Marvel up until the New 52 in 2011. Jeff Johns just couldn't take it anymore and renamed him Shazam, which kind of took away some stuff. It changes the character a bit, I think. And,
I can't take Jeff Johns anymore, so I guess we're even.
Yeah. Well,
but hey, did you see Captain Marvel yet?
Unfortunately,
I have not. No, we talked about it last week when you were screwing around somewhere.
Fortunately, I did.
Yeah,
it's like Doctor Strange or the first Thor movie. If you need like a bar of reference, so.
I would agree with that, but I like Thor and the first Thor movie and Doctor Strange.
Man, I love that first Thor movie. Doctor Strange, maybe not, but Thor, yeah.
Well,
not as funny as Thor, but I mean, I like Brie Larson, so maybe she'll be fantastic in Avengers Endgame. It's not my favorite Marvel movie.
Well, for the 1000th time, I'll say that I'm a DC fan. Love the Marvel movies. I'll probably wait on Captain Marvel if it's okay to do that before seeing Endgame, if I won't miss anything. And I'm probably even going to wait on Shazam till it hits digital. I don't like going to the theater. I'm going to sound like an old man yelling at kids to get off my lawn, but I get so tired of, in the middle of the movie, kids holding their phone up like this, shining their light from their screens in my face.
Well, I'll say this for digital. DC Universe next Sunday, it's Batman Day, March 30th. They're celebrating Batman's Detective Comics, like 90th year or something ridiculous. And but DC Universe will be free for 24 hours next Sunday. So everyone needs to make sure they binge watch at that point, it'll be 7 episodes of Doom Patrol because it's absolutely amazing. And you're really missing out by not watching it.
So will this be my chance to watch Teen Titans?
It will.
Watch Doom Patrol first. Doom Patrol first, then you can deal with Teen Titans.
Don't forget about Lois and Clark.
Oh.
I got about a 30-minute attention span. This isn't going to work.
It depends what appeals to Matt. He may like Teen Titans characters more than Doom Patrol.
The Titans show, it's very good. But Doom Patrol, it's like, I mean, gosh, I don't even know what to compare it to. It's really.
Someone said that it was very low budget. Is that not true?
It doesn't. I mean, maybe
I might have said that. It's so low budget.
I heard on your podcast. That's where I heard it.
Man,
that's fake news.
Thanks for listening to my podcast.
Fake news. Radio. Right there, fake news.
Honestly, it is low budget, but honestly, I haven't even noticed when watching the episodes.
It feels so much like the comic book that I just am begging them to dump some money into it and make it legitimate because it is so hard to watch because of the low budget.
I live in Los Angeles and I'm not complaining as much as Kelly. So that should tell you something. Kelly's not drinking enough before, or he's drinking too much before. I don't know.
I started drinking at 11 a.m. West Coast time. So don't tell me I'm not drinking too much. And that was yesterday.
That's weird because I can't tell at all. Anyway, that's good news. Look, this is good news for DC. This is why I brought this up. This is good news for DC because I think it was Pete and I several months ago who were talking about what DC needs to do is, I wanted an expanded universe like Marvel has. Obviously, they screwed it up. And we said that each movie should just be some sort of Elseworlds variation. Like I don't think they're going to go this far, but it would be cool to like do a Batman movie and then 2 years later do a Gotham by Gaslight live action movie. There's just the possibilities are unlimited when you can do that. I'm glad that Shazam looks good because that means that there'll be more DC movies. And now for some sad news. Kelly, I know you will be very disappointed you probably already know this. It's probably why you're drinking. But it's been announced that next year, the 15th season of Supernatural will be its last season.
After only 15 years, I have to say goodbye to Sam and Dean.
I know. It seems like only
15 years ago.
15 years ago that it aired. Yeah. Yeah, I like the show. It's a dumb show that I like to watch as way.
Absolutely. It'd be great if any of the shows that they had tried to split off, into various other shows, like there was at one point they were trying to get the gals who had done, the cop and her daughters.
Yeah,
they were sisters. I actually know one of the actors, the one that plays Alex.
Yeah.
And I think it would have worked, but
I do too.
I don't understand. They never really, that I saw, they never really gave a reason why they decided not to do it.
And honestly, that backdoor pilot episode they did, I thought was really good. So
I kind of did too.
Yeah. And
so I was like, I'll watch
this. To I forget which one of the girls it is. He's like, when she rescues him, he's like, "You're my hero." I thought, man, this is a great backdoor pilot. And then they suddenly decide they're not going to do it. I don't get it.
Yeah, it had a lot of buzz behind it. There was a huge Twitter campaign, all this stuff, and I'm hoping that there's still a chance for it, but it's because CW's ending their two biggest shows next season.
Yeah,
I mean,
what's Supernatural's
Arrow.
Oh, right.
It's still their second or maybe their biggest rating show
after what's it 7 years?
Yeah, gosh, I think it's almost 10.
Well, it seems like only 15 years ago that Arrow came on the air.
I'll think about Supernatural. When they announced that they're ending Supernatural, that was major news. It wasn't just on the comic book news sites and stuff. I mean, that was like Variety and Hollywood Reporter are writing huge articles about Supernatural.
Well,
so
Supernatural predates the CW even.
Yeah,
that was a WB show.
Yeah.
So that is kind of big news. It'll be, I'll be honest. I love the show. It's time for it to go away.
Yeah.
The same thing with Arrow.
Arrow was about 7 or 8 years.
I don't love Arrow, and yes, it is time for it to go away. But I do like Supernatural. I wish a lot of the crises that they fix aren't ones that they actually started. But
I've said it a million times before. I'll say it again. If every show that I loved would just cancel itself, I could get shit done in my real life.
Yeah. There you go.
I'll say this about Supernatural. I mean, it's had bad episodes over the years, but for the most part, it's been. I mean, it was supposed to end in season 5, and we're 10 years later. So I'm gonna miss it. It's I mean, part of it is the cast was very enthusiastic for the show. The creators loved it. I mean, maybe it's better it goes out now before it starts getting like really bad. But I don't know. No, I don't think it's really bad right now.
I don't think it's bad.
I don't think it's bad, but there have been several bad seasons, and it's just like, if you wanted to go out on top, you're a little late for that. I still watch the show and love it, but it's a silly show.
Do you know how I want this to end? I want the very last scene of the series to be, if Sam and Dean die, then it could be like Castiel and Jack doing this. But I want the very last scene of the series to be them closing the trunk full of weapons and saying, "We have work to do."
No, and I think most people, I've seen that mentioned in a dozen articles, including Hollywood Reporter and Variety. So
you've seen that mentioned? Wow.
No, that literal exact description of the episode. So yeah, I mean, I can't like.
I feel less special now.
Well, I mean, it's the point of ending the show. Here's hoping they give it the ending we're all expecting, and they don't try to swerve us. That's all I ask.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, think about it. How old were they when they started? 20?
Yeah, 22, 23. I don't know.
All right. So now they're pushing 37 to 40, right?
Yeah.
Huh?
They've had a good, as Supernatural investigators go, that's a good run.
Pretty great, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe kind of think about training somebody new to take over the job,
You see some of those flashbacks, like, wow, who are those kids?
Right. But think about this. They never, they sort of like took over some of this from their dad, right?
Yeah.
Do they have kids?
No.
What the hell is that feedback coming from you, Pete?
It's my dog.
Oh, okay.
He gave him a bath and then they threw him in my room.
Did Supernatural last longer than Bonanza or Gunsmoke?
No, Gunsmoke is still
over 20 years.
Gunsmoke still has the record, and it's not even close.
While we're on the subject of Supernatural, and then let's move on to other things. Does anyone think that they're setting Jack up to be the big bad for the rest of the season?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they going to kill him? I don't know. I mean,
so we've got the end of this.
He's such a good character.
We've got the end of this season, and then it's going to be another season. It sounds like, right? Or is it a short
20 episodes?
Season?
20
short,
episodes,
but it's 20 episodes, so it's close enough to a full season.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's what they're building up to. Jack was someone that I didn't care for at all, that they turned into a character that I'm like, oh, I like this guy. And of course they'll make him the bad guy now. They have to do that.
Yeah, that happened to you too. Yeah, at first I was like, what the hell is this? We're jumping the shark. And then I thought, he's actually I like this little guy, So anyway, Bradbury 13. I found out about this week. I am ashamed of myself because I'm a Bradbury fan, huge Bradbury fan, and I'm a huge audio drama fan. And I didn't know that there was a Ray Bradbury audio drama. Well, you actually have it? Oh yeah, you're showing your signed books again. I got to ask you something in a minute, Ben.
That's fine. I'm here.
I'll just read this from Wikipedia. Bradbury 13 was a series of radio adaptations of Ray Bradbury stories. The series was created by Michael McDonough, who also adapted the stories, directed, and produced the programs. Aired on NPR Playhouse on over 250 stations. And I looked, it is on archive.org, I believe. So I'm looking forward to listening to those. Especially they've got Night Call Collect here in the list. So
have you seen his TV series that came right after it?
I've seen some of the episodes. I thought I hadn't, but then I remembered that I had. So yeah. Then we're gonna get to Twilight Zone here in a second, but before we do, just real briefly, I want you to because you haven't told this on air about meeting Ray Bradbury and what he was like, and you've got a funny story about that, I think.
So Ray Bradbury, before he passed, he used to do his birthday every year on his birthday. He would do an event at a local bookstore in Glendale.
Wait a second, make sure I have this right. This was before he died?
Yes, okay. Technically. Yes.
Got it.
So he was in his late 80s, the first one I went to. I want to say he was 88 or 89. And what they would do is you could buy 2 books. You had to buy a book at the store to get it signed, unfortunately. And then he would drink wine while telling stories. And he's the best storyteller I've ever heard in my life. Better than Neil Gaiman, better than anybody, even in his 80s. You tell stories about seeing like King Kong in theaters the first time in the 1930s and things like that. And he would drink like 1 glass of wine. He'd be completely trashed. And he would rant about things. And my favorite moment was probably when a school teacher asked how he felt about the Patriot Act in relation to Fahrenheit 451. And he then taught her about how conservative he is. But really, I mean, it was just a neat experience. You get to go up, you get your book signed, you get to talk to him for a couple seconds. He had a stroke several years earlier, but he was very lucid. He just was in a wheelchair, and he was just, again, he's the funniest person I'd ever seen speak.
And you said he would get really drunk at these things too.
Yeah, but it would only take like 1.5 glasses of wine for that to happen. So if you can see the signature on this book and how like shaky and kind of like indescript it is, it's because he'd been drinking. But he's Ray Bradbury. Like if anyone's allowed to drink to excess, And by excess, we mean a
he
glass
never
of
learned to drive, so I suppose he can drink all he wants whenever he wants.
Exactly. But honestly, like, he was such a nice guy, and he told these great, like, he'd be telling you about going to see a movie in the theaters, and you're thinking like, oh, this would be a boring story, and it was never a boring story. He knew just how to make every single thing he said exciting. And I don't know. I mean, as I said, like, I compare him to Neil Gaiman because I remember seeing Neil Gaiman speak live once, and he could really, like, he would read a short story and he could make it sound so amazing, and he had nothing on Ray Bradbury. And to tie into our Gallows Hill guest, I remember Ray Bradbury mentioning that he had a relative that was at the Salem witch trials. I don't remember the details because this is probably 10 years ago now, but
it was Cotton Bradbury Mather.
Okay, please tell us.
That's all he knows. That's
Matt, you mentioned the name. You got to tell us what's going on here.
It was bullshit. It was Cotton Bradbury Mather. Never mind.
Old man Mather's boy.
The things you do when you think you're muted and you're not. I'm drinking Coke. I think I just burped on air a couple of minutes ago.
You did.
I did. Were you proud of me, Kelly? I'll tell you how secure I am. I will not edit that out for the audio edition.
Joshua, do you know more about this Bradbury relative that was at the Salem witch trials?
That's all. He just gave you everything he knows on it.
Yeah, don't look at me. I'm no expert.
All right.
Okay, I just found it on Wikipedia.
Oh, great.
Mary Perkins Bradbury. She was born of Perkins and married into the Bradbury family. She was tried and sentenced to hang, but then her conviction was discredited after the trials, and she lived to be age 85.
Well, speaking of Matthew Carpenter, I cannot believe I am about to do this. From an article in Bloody Disgusting published last week, here's the title of the article. Eight-Legged Freaks remains a criminally overlooked horror comedy.
So good. So good.
Is this a movie night thing?
Please make this a movie night.
No, this is you. When I was the one doing movie night instead of you, you'd always be saying, "Let's watch that, big spider movie or something."
Spider, it's a good movie.
Big ass spider. Well, Eight-Legged Freaks would. I'm sure you would enjoy too. Then
this movie has nobody else watched this. This movie is spectacular on the level of Gremlins.
This is the one with the mine.
Yes.
In the early 2000s, America was in dire need of a good time, and Ellery Alkayam brought it in spades with what is the most criminally overlooked monster comedies of all time.
Agree 100%.
All right, well.
David Arquette, right?
Yes.
Yes. Carrie Werr.
Yeah. This is the only movie she made, right?
Unfortunately not, but I can understand why you would hope that.
Scarlett Johansson is in this?
Yep,
yes,
as the
very
young daughter.
Scarlett Johansson. Yes.
And Carrie Werr, which
as her mother.
Which is from
Sliders.
From Sliders, yeah.
I'm remembering now. Carrie Werr is her mother, right?
Yes, she is.
And Carrie Werr is the sheriff.
Yes.
Oh, Christ, I need a drink.
This movie is so much fun. And every time that Matt has said something about this, I have 100% agreed with him. I love this movie on the level of Gremlins. I'm not shitting you.
Ooh, Tom Noonan, too.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, and who plays her? Who plays the grandmother that saves everybody at the end?
Oh, great. Spoiler alert.
I don't remember that part.
Definitely not watching it now. If anyone thinks they can talk me into watching a movie about huge spiders, they would be wrong.
Let's not say huge spiders. Let's say large spiders. There's no spider larger than a human in this.
This is true.
Okay. That's not huge. Well, wait. I don't want to discriminate. You're right.
Oh, I just flashed on the scene in the mall where they're trying to protect themselves in the mall. Oh, Jesus.
Let's go to the mall.
You'll
And it's
never
like
convince me
ripped
that
right out
this
of
movie
Alien.
is not great.
Okay. So there it is. Yeah, it's recommended by Kelly Young, so take that with however you want to take that.
It's not
I've
as
been drinking.
it's probably better than Big Ass Spider.
I don't know. I mean, it's got Professor
It
Robert
is.
David Arquette in it, so
It
how
is
bad?
better than Big Ass Spider, which I also like.
Josh, you please feel free to join in anytime you want to tell these guys they're wrong about anything or right.
I wouldn't go as far as Gremlins level, but it was a fun movie.
All right, Twilight Zone. Twilight Zone. All right, so we're getting a new Twilight Zone, and does anybody remember when it's premiering?
April 1st.
April 1st. Okay, thank you. And it's Jordan Peele is going to be the host. And I do want to talk a little bit about Us in a bit, but not right now. Favorites, guys? Do you guys have favorite episodes? I'm really interested in hearing your favorite episodes. My absolute favorite is And When the Sky Was Opened, which is definitely cosmic horror. I don't remember offhand if any of the 59 series, if any others could be classified as cosmic horror or not.
So I will go with Little Girl Lost.
Well, hang on a second. I want to hear what Mike's was, and
Well, no,
I don't remember this episode and what the cosmic horror angle is.
Okay, so I don't have the synopsis in front of me, and it's been probably 2 or 3 years since I've seen it. But these pilots go up. How far, Pete? How far did they go?
They go to space.
Yeah, they go to space, and they come back, and it's a 3-man crew. But when they come back, suddenly everyone's hailing, the heroics of the 2-man crew, and one of the, they're saying, wait a minute, there were 3 guys here, and it's like the guy was just erased from existence retroactively. Nobody remembers him. He just never was. And it goes on from there. And it basically, it's not explained in a good way. It basically says there's some kind of entity, some cosmic entity of some sort who is playing around with us, and we're powerless against it. It reminded me a lot of this book that I've recommended on this podcast before called Displaced Person. It's a young adult novel, but adults would enjoy it too. It's a 1978 book. And I'll just read a little bit of the synopsis. Graham Drury is 17. He's a rather ordinary looking person of average height. He dresses casually and well and gets along fine with his classmates and friends. In fact, the typical all-rounder. The change begins gradually. More and more he feels that people are ignoring him. Why? Waitresses, tram conductors, and even his parents and girlfriend are looking right through him as if they can hardly see or hear him. And he sort of slowly gets erased from existence. From the back, Walter McVitie says, the narrator of this intriguing story says we are all pawns in a game so vast we will never be able to confront the forces which control our destinies. If you can find this book on eBay or Amazon, I highly recommend it. It's called Displaced Person by Lee Harding, and the concept reminded me a lot of When the Sky Was Opened.
But I gotta say, and When the Sky was opened it's more cosmic than that book, which
yes,
sort of dials it way back near the end. But in this one, they don't even explain anything. They don't explain that there's an entity. They don't know why this is happening. And especially, it's poignant where the last guy sort of knows what's going to happen to him, and he's trying so hard for it not to happen.
Yeah, it is an amazing episode, Kelly. If you haven't seen it or don't remember seeing it, please do check it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember this one, but I'm gonna look for it now.
Amazon
I saw it as a kid, and it's probably one of the 3 that had that kind of vivid, where you can't forget it.
Yes.
You're thinking, you watch the episode, and then you don't go to sleep that night because all you can do is think about the episode. And I would say that is one of the 3 or 4 that I remember watching as like a 9-year-old, not even recently.
Well, that is my number 1. And I want to ask you guys, what are your favorites? I'll just quickly list a few others. Howling Man is a favorite of mine. Of course, everybody names this one, but I love it so much. Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
Absolutely.
The Hitchhiker. I like that one a lot. Interestingly, that was adapted from a radio play, from a radio play from the 40s. So that story first came to life as a audio drama. Long Live Walter Jameson. I liked that one. The Odyssey of Flight 33, time travel. So yeah, and The Arrival. I wrote this down yesterday, and I'm not remembering the Arrival or why I liked it. Old Age is Terrible, man. So those are kind of my favorites. I'm probably missing some, but who wants to go next with some of their favorite Twilight Zone episodes?
So
yeah, Josh. Oh, Pete.
So
I'll add Pete and then Josh. How's that?
One real quick. Little Girl Lost
mm-hmm.
is about a little girl who vanishes in her house, but her mom and dad can still hear her. And they bring in their friend who's a specialist, and they find a spot on the wall where you can put your hand through and enter another dimension.
Yes, I remember this. Did you feel like maybe when you saw Poltergeist that there was some...
There obviously some...
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, I don't remember Little Girl Lost
and then Dad has to go in to get her and drag her out.
Yeah, that's a great episode.
What makes it creepy is the spot is getting smaller and smaller.
Right. Yes.
Is that your number 1, Pete, would you say? Or
it is a damn good episode. And, I do agree with Kelly. I'm thinking that Poltergeist borrowed heavily from this episode.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, it's I'm a fan of a lot of other episodes, but this one, and it's not a well-known episode, but it's just creepy as hell. Because the other thing is that the guy is, when he's in the other dimension looking for his daughter, he's walking around. And then when they bring him back, he's like, no, you were never all the way through. I had a hand on you the whole time. So it sort of gets the idea that, it's really, the physics are different. So yes,
you could definitely say something like a story like that definitely falls in the category of weird fiction,
absolutely.
Which I think a lot of Twilight Zone episodes you could label weird fiction.
Yeah,
as opposed to a general horror category.
And then of course, you have to list It's a Good Life. There's just
that's the most scariest one.
It is. That's why I've only watched it once, and I'll never watch it again.
Yeah.
That's the kid who wishes you away to the cornfield, right?
Yes.
Not any kid.
Yes.
It's Ron Howard.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was Ron Howard?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, it was Bill Mumy.
Yeah.
It was Bill Mumy. Ron Howard was in the one about the guy who went back to his childhood.
Oh, Last Willoughby.
Damn it. It was one that one with Ron Howard is one that I really like, but it's not scary. It's poignant.
Well, okay. Yeah, you're right. It's Bill Mumy.
The one that you're talking about with is Walking Distance.
Walking Distance. Yes, I just looked it up. Yes, I'm mixing the two because the two actors as kids they look identical. Let's be honest here.
Fun. Just a funny aside. When I was a kid, I got told over and over that I looked like Ron Howard. So, yeah, not anymore. What happened, right? You want to list any more, Pete?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Josh? Okay, Josh.
I think for me as a kid, the one that stuck with me the most for my initial kind of watch through was To Serve Man. It's yeah. I mean, I think obviously as a kid, it was something that I got the twist, right? So I was really young when I watched it, and just one subtle play on word totally changes the whole episode. And it is just spectacular work. I think now my favorite's probably The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, because I think Rod Serling is really at his best when
that's a commentary on the McCarthyism, practically, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think he's at his best when he's talking about the horror that people can do to other people, rather than just kind of lacing it up and go for something spooky.
Let me just comment on what you said real quick, Matt, because I was looking up the main Twilight Zone article at Wikipedia, and I didn't know this. Throughout, you guys still there, or am I?
We're here.
All right. As a boy, Rod Serling was a fan of Pulp Fiction stories. As an adult, he sought topics with themes such as racism, government, war, society, and human nature in general. Serling decided to combine these two interests as a way to broach these subjects on television at a time when such issues were not commonly addressed. But reading on down, he was famous as writing for televised drama, as he was for criticizing the media's limitations. His most vocal complaints concerned censorship, which was frequently practiced by the sponsors and networks. Quote, "I was not permitted to have my senators discuss or any current or pressing problem," he said of his 1957 production, The Arena. So I think that he wanted to address a lot of this stuff on TV and wasn't able to get away with it sometimes. Sometimes he did.
Something that maybe a lot of people don't realize is the classic 1960s Planet of the Apes film with Charlton Heston. He actually wrote the first few drafts, and he emphasized some of the issues, the parallels to racism in the script, and I don't know what you call it, religion versus science, the argument in schools and such.
Yeah.
He added those ideas to the script that weren't necessarily in the original book, or were more subtle in the original book, I'll say. In fact, there's a fan edit of the Planet of the Apes that's edited to look like a Twilight Zone episode, which, if you know the places to go, I recommend taking a look at it.
Okay. Josh, you have any other favorites to list before we move on?
I don't. I don't remember the name of it. It's just totally lost it. But the one where they're doing the plastic surgery and they think it's a total failure. Anyone know what I'm talking about? No.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Absolutely.
It's the one with the Beverly Hillbillies.
Is that Eye of the Beholder?
Eye of the Beholder, that's it.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I have now validated my whole existence.
Yeah, I do that every Sunday, Pete.
Is that when I make lunch, or just,
no, when you come on the show?
But I've missed a lot of.
All right, who wants to go next? Favorite Twilight Zone episode?
I can go.
Right.
So, I mean, like most people, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet is still my favorite episode. Saw it as a little kid. The twist ending that he wasn't crazy blew my mind. It's like I don't know, I was 8 or 9. I was watching some marathon on TBS or something. So what I did for this show, rather than just list everyone else's favorite episodes, because they're all my favorite episodes too, I went and watched a bunch of the 1980s series, which is not great.
Don't you dare steal my episode.
So
Right. Well, hopefully I don't steal your episode. So I watched this in the 90s in reruns on the Sci-Fi Channel, back before it was known as Sci-Fi. And so there are some episodes that are like kind of neat for who wrote them. So someone in the YouTube chat mentioned Grandma earlier, which is a Stephen King story, and it's adapted for the show by Harlan Ellison, who's Harlan Ellison wrote for a lot of the first season of the 80s Twilight Zone, but he's mostly famous for his short stories and his work on the original Star Trek series with what's it called? City at the Edge of Forever, maybe?
Yes.
My age is
Yes.
Yep, that's right.
But
Babylon 5.
it's a decent adaptation. It's not amazing. J. Michael Straczynski wrote, I think, most of the third season. But a couple episodes that stood out for me. One, and this I'm just guessing this is the one that Kelly was going to say, was Nightcrawlers.
No, but I love that
okay,
episode.
Good. Nightcrawlers is an amazing episode. There's no legal way to stream it, but if you search YouTube for Twilight Zone Nightcrawlers, you're probably going to find the episode. Just saying.
Also, you can just buy the disc, which is what I did. The entire series is available on DVD.
Yeah, I want to say it's about $40 used. It's out of print now.
No, it's I bought the entire thing for like $15 on Amazon.com. It's not a great. It is not great.
The entire series?
Yeah, the entire 1985 series, 85 through 86, I think.
So to clarify why it's not great, in the mid 1980s, and a lot of people these days won't understand this, video was the new thing, videotape. So what they did is they filmed it on 35 millimeter, like everything was filmed. And then they did all the editing on videotape, like they did with Star Trek The Next Generation, which is why Next Generation took so long to come out on Blu-ray, because they had to spend something like $100,000 a season to re-edit every single episode and redo all the special effects, because they edited it in 480i on videotape, which looks horrible. Really horrible. Like, you put it on DVD, it looks like the worst YouTube video you've ever seen.
It's really fucking awful, yeah.
But at the time, it was so much cheaper, and they thought that was the future. Well, we've learned better since then, thankfully. But so anyways, back to the episode, Nightcrawlers, excuse me. It's just to give a brief summary, there's a guy in a diner, he's acting weird, a state trooper goes to investigate, and he has these special abilities, and I don't want to say any more to spoil it, but go search it up on YouTube. It's actually, there's not a lot of great episodes in the 1980s series, but this is one of the top ones. Another one I'll mention was called Dead Run. It's not.
Wait a second. You're just gonna slip by Nightcrawlers, based on the short story by Robert McCammon, directed by William Friedkin, because this is what was going on in that 85 series. That 85 series gets slept on, and it's fucking great, I think.
Well, I was trying to say that earlier, but then Mike went off on me. So I'm just saying, Craven directed a bunch of episodes.
Yeah, Mike is a drunk. You can't trust anything he says.
What did I do? No, I was thinking when you were talking about videotape, I was just, I've got a lot of shares in Betamax, and I'm still rooting for that to happen.
You talk trash. I have a Betamax player about 4 feet away from me on the other side of the wall.
Oh my god!
Good and accurate prophecy.
I love Benjamin so much.
I'm gonna send you all pictures later, just to get How dare you insult Betamax?
This is why
Betamax lasted longer in Japan than VHS did. They only stopped making Betamax tapes. Stopped making Betamax tapes 2 years ago.
This is why, in a nutshell, Ben is now part of the show. So
hey, I even convinced my wife to let me have it. That's telling you a lot. It's right on top of the Laserdisc player. I'll send pictures later. Don't worry.
The Laserdisc player. Oh my god!
Do you have a Super 8 projector?
I don't. I need to get one, but I don't actually have one of those yet. That was where the line was drawn, unfortunately. When you're married, you have to make these decisions, and then your wife will crush your heart and nix all your decisions. And you know,
Jesus. Ouch.
Does she listen to or watch
show.
the show now that you're a part of it? Or
she's vacuuming right now, so hopefully she can't hear me.
Ben, you do know that I've been married, right? Like lots.
Well, you
do know you're being recorded. I'm gonna need your wife's email address so I can send her the link
I'm just
to the
speaking
show.
to the general audience of the show. But yes, the 1980s version of Twilight Zone, to change the subject from my personal life, it actually had a lot of star power behind it, just not a lot of budget. So Wes Craven directed Bruce Willis in the very first episode. Not a great episode. It did happen. It was before Bruce Willis was big. I think it was even during the first season of Moonlighting.
Yeah.
Which, for you children, that was before Die Hard.
He had a lot of hair in that episode. Saturday was the episode.
Was it Okay, yeah, you're right. Saturday.
Harlan Ellison story.
Shatner Day.
Harlan Ellison wrote I believe he wrote the episode. Wes Craven directed it. Harlan Ellison wrote most of the first season, actually, or did most of the adaptations before he was fired, like he normally was from TV series. Harlan Ellison, a brilliant writer. I Have No Mouth, But I Must Scream is one of the greatest short stories of all time.
Oh, and scary as hell.
Horrifying. But apparently a very difficult person to work with.
Apparently,
if you want an amazing introduction to Harlan Ellison, I recommend you look up the Scooby-Doo episode he was in. It's very brilliant. It stars H.P. Hatecraft.
That's right.
You think I'm making this up?
No, I don't think you're making it up. I've seen it.
It's so good.
It is good.
If you have a vrv.co subscription,
HP Hatecraft
services. It's so funny. And he makes fun. I mean, he knows that he's difficult to work with. He admits this. In the DVD set that Kelly mentioned, he's on the commentary on a lot of these early episodes, and he admits this while trash talking every other person on the production. Just saying. Anyway, so back to other episodes. As I said earlier, someone mentioned Grandma. It was a Stephen King story adapted by Harlan Ellison. It's a fairly faithful adaptation. What I liked watching it as a kid is that they actually give you the kids' thoughts as sort of a narration over the episode. It's also turned into a movie. I know it was on Netflix not long ago. I liked the episode actually better than the movie. The episode's 20 minutes, and that's really all you need for the episode. Stephen King was in his Lovecraft period when he wrote the short story, so they name dropped the Necronomicon and Hastur and stuff like that. Again, if you go on YouTube and search Twilight Zone Grandma, Gramma, you're going to find it. Just saying. 20 minutes. It's kind of a fun episode, if not, the deepest. Great ending. Well done ending. And the final episode I'll mention is Dead Run. Now, this is not... Something about this episode stuck with me. It's based on a short story and by Richard Matheson, I believe. Maybe my memory's failing me. It's about a truck driver, and he's hired to drive souls to hell. And it stars John Delancey and Brett Spiner, and it's the 80s. This is before Star Trek, of course. It was a very these are the general actors that are on in the 80s, but I like the concept behind it. The way it's sort of executed. So I'd recommend tracking that episode down as well. Again, go on YouTube, Twilight Zone Dead Run. You're going to find it. It's not a great... The Twilight Zone series in the 80s was not amazing. Rod Serling sold his rights so they would start making the show. But it did have some gems in there. Babylon 5 was mentioned earlier. J. Michael Straczynski's magnum opus, 90s space opera that I recommend everyone watch. He actually wrote most of the last 2 seasons. He's a brilliant writer. He wrote comic books. He wrote Spider-Man for years, for example. There's a lot of bad episodes. It's not near as classic as the original series, but it's not as bad as the 2000s revival. And I think there are a lot of gems in there. That Nightcrawlers episode especially. Really, if you watch it, you're gonna love the episode.
Okay, so
my turn.
Whoever.
Okay, I'm just gonna mention two because a lot of mine were already mentioned. One, of course, is Time Enough at Last.
Oh yeah.
It's not cosmic. It's just quiet horror with the most sad ending you could imagine.
Yeah.
And then the other one I just liked it from the first time that I saw it, and I can't say it's great, but I already mentioned it. It's Walking Distance, about a guy who goes back to his old hometown and he finds himself in his own past. It's more poignant and nostalgic. But you already mentioned most of the ones that scared the bejesus out of him.
All right, who do you have left? Rick?
Okay, since I had to leave, did anybody mention the new exhibit?
No.
Okay, that's a hour-long episode about a museum, a wax museum of serial killers. It has Martin Balsam, and it's one of the scariest episodes I ever saw of the Twilight Zone. I saw that when I was like 5 years old. It was the first time I heard the word name Jack the Ripper.
I need to have my wife watch this episode, right? Because
it's available on Daily Motion at the very least.
This is the one with the mannequins and everything, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I watched it before the show, so it was available on YouTube as of last week.
What season, Rick?
It's the next to last season when they had the hour-long episodes. So whenever they had that Miles show.
The original series?
Yeah, the original series, they had one season of hour-long episodes.
Okay. What else, Rick?
Let me see. There's another one called He's Alive with Dennis Hopper, where Dennis Hopper plays a young fascist leader in modern times who's getting advice from a mysterious shadowy figure who you probably guessed who it is, but I'm not going to say who it ruin the show for you if you haven't seen it. But that one was very good too. And there's also a witchcraft episode written by Earl Hammer Jr., who did The Waltons, about Anne Francis is a witch who can turn into a panther.
Okay. Ben really wants to hear Pete's list from the 80s. So
Kelly's list. I think it was
Kelly's list. Sorry.
No, I didn't watch TV in the 80s.
Yeah.
How dare you?
You were too busy living life.
I wasn't alive in the 80s. So.
Okay, well, so I thought I would be a contrarian, but Benjamin, beat me to it. I loved that 80s version of the Twilight Zone. There's no way you can beat the original Twilight Zone, but I thought the 80s version had some real fucking great scenes and stories in it. And Nightcrawlers is one of the best of that first season. There were a lot of hits and misses in that, but there were some real star power behind some of these episodes. And my favorite Twilight Zone episode is from 1985. And it was called Wordplay, and it stars Robert Klein, if you remember him, the comedian, and Annie Potts. I am a man of a certain age, and I have a massive crush on Annie Potts.
Yeah, Ghostbusters.
Well, Ghostbusters, but for me, it was Corvette Summer.
All right.
This was directed by Wes Craven. And it was written by Rockne S. O'Bannon, who was kind of a big deal in the 80s. I mean, he wrote the movie Alien Nation. He wrote a ton of Amazing Stories episodes. He wrote a bunch of these Twilight Zone episodes. And TV for everything that was going on in the 80s. Rockne S. O'Bannon was just one of those names that you saw pop up. In Wordplay, Robert Klein's character slowly goes through a day and starts realizing that the English language is changing on him, and he's the only one who understands it. And one of these scenes is he goes in, and people are starting to say phrases to him that don't quite make sense. Like, he's teaching old dogs new trumpets, and he kind of walks home, and he's like, what does that mean? And as he goes through like 3 days, the English language has completely changed on him, to the point where at the end of the episode, he's opening up a children's book, and he's looking at a picture of a dog, and it says Wednesday under it. And this show, I have only seen the one time I saw it in 1985, and it stuck with me forever. And I thought,
you know what? You're really selling me on this. That sounds like a fascinating premise.
This episode was cool. And the thing that I loved about the mid-'80s Twilight Zone was that they would just jam the episodes in as long as it took. So you would watch the hour episode, and there would be 3 episodes in, or 2 episodes in, or 4 episodes in, because whatever it took to tell the story, whether it was 15 minutes or 30 minutes or 40 minutes, that's how long they did it. And I thought it gave them a lot more freedom than the original series did. They didn't have to make anything fit to what the studio required to get commercial breaks in or whatever. So
I didn't know that. That's
to emphasize that there are 6-minute segments in that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool. It was just like whatever it takes.
You're starting really selling me on this 80s series.
1985 series, I think, it's certainly not as great as the original series, because nothing is. They did everything in that however many year run that was, 6 years or whatever it was. You really can't tell a story with a twist ending that Twilight Zone hasn't already done in that original series.
Yeah.
But there was some cool stuff in the 80s. The later ones with Forrest Whitaker as the host, those were not good. But this mid-'80s, there were some, like Benjamin said, some real gems in there. And there were a lot of real shit ones too. But the great thing was that, you might sit through that 6-minute gem and find, or 6-minute shit, and find a 13-minute gem later on in that same episode. And that's what was so cool about that 80s series.
Well, I was really kind of, I wouldn't say tuning you and Ben out, but not.
But we understood what you meant. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was basically in my mind thinking, okay, Ben and Kelly, they like the 80s series. I know I wouldn't, so I'm not even going to try it. But you guys are really selling me on this, is what I mean.
Even just that first season of the first 80s series, you should check that out. I think that he's right. You can probably find all of those episodes on YouTube now. They are also.
I might have this past week. I might have checked and rewatched a lot of this.
Have you guys seen the trailer for the new Twilight Zone, the Jordan Peele trailer?
I have. I'm leaving my CBS All Access subscription running just to check out the first few episodes to make sure it's okay.
Well, I'm lucky because I have to subscribe to that anyway because of Criminal Minds for my wife and son. So
I just have a question for Kelly.
Yeah.
Did either you or Ben mention an episode called Shadow Man?
I remember that episode, but I don't know why.
I left it off, but yeah, no, it's a fantastic episode, honestly.
It was directed by Joe Danny, was written by that Rockney S. O'Banion person.
Okay.
And the premise was that there was a shadow-like man, demon, that kills children and sleeps under the bed of always a child, but won't harm the person whose bed he sleeps under.
Yeah.
So I watched it as a kid, and it's horribly traumatizing to small children. Just throwing that out there, because as I said, like I was like 11 or 12 when I was watching these on the Sci-Fi Channel, and this is one of those episodes. If I had to compare it to something, it's sort of like a more tame version of The Boogeyman by Stephen King. If any of you have read
that is a great short story.
So this is more tame than that. Honestly, and goodbye, Pete. We miss you. But it's a very good episode. Again, there's so many of these little gems. It's a low budget show, but they got like Wes Craven, and they were adapting stories by Robert McKinnon. They were adapting stories by Stephen King. I mean, Richard Matheson was heavily involved at the time.
Yeah.
The Button Box was adapted for an episode. Not the best adaptation of it, but it was there. The ending is not good. But I mean,
the button story is in there.
Yeah,
it's they changed it enough that Richard Matheson had them use like a different name for the story.
Did you guys see the movie from about 10 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is a more faithful, at least for the ending, at least it's more faithful. There's a radio play version called the Chinatown Button that's a better adaptation.
I know, but I did like that movie. It's just so weird, and that's it. Being set in the 70s, I think it achieved something that if it had been set in the present day, it would not have achieved. So,
I love the twist. I mean, the twist of the original short story, not the 1980s Twilight Zone adaptation. I really love the ending of that. But yeah, I mean, this is a series, as Kelly mentioned, where there's a lot of gems in there. There's a lot of crap. Even by people like Harlan Ellison or J. Michael Straczynski, who you'd hold to a higher standard. The budgets were low, but I mean, there's some really, and most of the episodes are roughly, the segments are about 20, maybe 30 minutes. There's some really good stuff in there. So I just recommend checking it out.
Me too.
Okay, have any of you seen Us yet? Well, apparently everyone else in America have seen it. What'd you think, Josh? No spoilers, but
sure. I think it was a really great movie. I think it was a great follow-up to Get Out. Jordan Peele really establishes some more of his kind of unique perspective on horror. Obviously, a movie with a lot of diversity and something really poignant to 2019. For me, it did a little bit too much explaining at the end. I've always been someone who thinks that a good horror twist doesn't need to be explained that much. I think leaving it up to your own imagination, your own mind, makes it way scarier. But my wife, on the other hand, loved it. Loved that it was kind of spelled out. She didn't have to guess yes or no, or there was no ambiguity as to what was going on. And I thought ultimately it was a movie that kept me on the edge of my seat, and I really enjoyed it.
Is it better than Get Out?
I personally would not put it above Get Out. I think Get Out was brilliant. That said, I do think it is fantastic, and everyone should go see it.
Well, I'm glad to hear this is not turning into an M. Night Shyamalan situation, where the first one's brilliant and the second one is terrible.
That second one was Unbreakable, and I love that film.
That's true.
The third film.
Is what I'm thinking of. What was the third film anyway?
It was Signs.
Signs isn't bad though, really.
I don't like it.
It's okay. It's not its worst, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Get Out. I think most people are. I'm not with most people in this. I think it is a good movie. I think it is a very good movie. I don't think it was. For me, it wasn't the. It was overhyped a bit. So, but Doppelgangers, I am really looking forward to. Night, Matt. Thanks for coming on. I'm really looking forward to watching Us because, as I've mentioned before, I like doppelganger stories. There's an article that Jordan Peele was frightened of doppelgangers as a kid, and that's one of the reasons why he made this movie.
I'm just saying, I think Jordan Peele would fit in fantastic on this podcast. Every interview I read of him, he's dead on with most stuff. So I mean, Get Out, I think I agree with you, it was overhyped, but it was a very enjoyable kind of fun, horror film. The trailer, at least for us, looked amazing. So I'm excited to see it.
He writes, I've been terrified, terrified of the idea of doppelganger since I was a kid. I always had this vision of seeing myself across the subway platform and just kind of thought, if that's not creepy enough, what if the other you sort of smiled at you? Yeah, that's pretty interesting. All right, what else do we have to talk about? I'm probably going to go see Us. I don't see very many movies in the theater, but I'm excited enough about Us that I want to. I'll probably go see it during the week when everybody else is at work. Did you guys hear this? There's some sort of Daniel Stern renaissance. You know who Daniel Stern is, right?
Was he the guy that was in City Slickers?
City Slickers, Home Alone.
Chud.
Yes, and he's apparently on a new movie on a new TV series called Shrill. I haven't seen it. I don't know what it's about. But for me, his best performance, favorite movie ever is Blue Thunder. Great film.
Yeah. What's the whole renaissance though?
There's some big Twitter thing that everyone's rediscovering Daniel Stern.
Just because he's on a hit show now.
I guess he did very well or something. Okay. I don't know.
I mean, he's a great actor.
I mean, any excuse I have to just mention the movie Blue Thunder on the show, no matter how I have to twist that segue.
Understood.
Wasn't he also the narrator in Growing Pains?
Yep.
Oh, was he?
That was him.
For Fred Savage, he played the adult Fred Savage.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. All right. We have anything else, you guys?
I have kind of something cool. I mean, I haven't been on in a while, and I talk about the Parcel of Terror that comes out, and it's been a while. But you guys, if you're not taking advantage of this thing, this guy makes it's a subscription box, and you get cool stuff with it. And mostly, what he does is sculpt things. He casts them, and then he hand paints them. And then a couple months ago, it was The Fly. And so I got this really cool transporter thing, and then a super cool little fly creature. And then this last subscription box was The Thing. And so I got this super cool guy and McReady with a flamethrower. And
you need my for that McReady. Do you need my mailing address?
Do I just need to send this to you, Mike?
Yeah, go ahead.
Really, I'm trying to get Daniel to give me a break on this shit and send me either free stuff or more stuff, and then I'll push it on to you.
How do people get this stuff?
It's from Cryptocurium, CRYPTOCURIUM.com. Cryptocurium is his website, and it's a $30 a month subscription box. A lot of these subscription boxes are T-shirts and books and all this mass-produced stuff. This guy only makes as many of these casts as people who have signed up for the subscription box. So this is limited art. It's all hand painted. It's literally art. So support your independent artists, guys.
Awesome. Here's something weird. This is on Dread Central. It's an article by a guy named Josh Millican. Can we help? This is the title of the article. Can we help? Instagram suggests hashtag horror fans are in danger of, quote, harm and death. So I won't read this whole article, but I'll skip down. We were first alerted to the situation by a horror podcaster who informed us that searching the popular social media site, Instagram, they're talking about, for posts tagged hashtag horror will produce the following offer from Instagram. Can we help? Posts with words or tags you're searching for often encourage behavior that can cause harm and even lead to death. If you're going through something difficult, we'd like to help. Another screen reads, we've hidden posts for hashtag horror to protect our community from content that may encourage behavior that can cause harm and even lead to, you guessed it, death. From there, you can ignore this offer of help and continue on, or select get support. And I'm reading from the article, and it's total bullshit. Meanwhile, there is no offer for help in posts tagged, I don't know what this means, hashtag YOLO, hashtag so drunk, hashtag adrenaline junkie, hashtag wasted, hashtag murder, hashtag thug life, and many other truly questionable terms that suggest actual dangerous behavior. Even hashtag Satan is a safer quote unquote search than hashtag horror. So that tells you what Instagram thinks of all of us horror fans. So, I mean, where do you're in charge at Instagram? Where do you come up with this? This is a great idea to do, you know, but it's not. I mean, is it under hashtag suicide? You know, you would hope so, but not hashtag horror, I suppose. I don't know. It's a weird, wacky world, Kelly.
Yeah,
I mean,
I like it.
We've discussed depression on this podcast. You know,
Yes.
Anyone that needs help, please get it. Of course, lots of people deal with it, but honestly, I mean, I'm a massive horror fan. I'm not anywhere close to suicide. I don't really think there's a correlation here, and I think generally when people make these kind of things, you know, it's I don't know what the term would be, but it's just, you know, they're making something out of that's not there because they don't like the genre.
You know, it's just creating drama is what it is. I don't know. Even if you do honestly think this is a good idea, how come those other, you know, and you're at Instagram and you do honestly think this is a good idea, how come, you know, hashtag thug life, for example, isn't tagged with something like this? You know, I don't get it. It's really weird.
I think the real tragedy of all of this is that it's hurting indie authors who are trying to come up as using the hashtag horror and using social media. I mean, Stephen King's posts aren't out there getting hidden. It's people who are just starting out in horror. By the way, YOLO, you only live once. It's the 21st century version of, hey, hold my beer. This is going to be fun. But yeah, I think one of
Why did you only live once, Vad?
It's something people often shout before doing something risky, saying, you know, hey, you only live once. I don't know. I think that one's also, I think that one's harmless enough.
Oh, you like staying up after midnight or something? You know, that kind of
Having sex with a woman.
I'm old, so, you know, staying after midnight, staying up after midnight. Yeah, I'd be shouting, you only live once. Damn it, I'm doing this.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Joshua, I just want to say the picture outside your window as it's evolved throughout this episode, it's pretty amazing. I'm gonna be honest.
I have a question. Who's the figure that keeps peeking in every once in a while through the window?
Don't even play, man. It's not funny.
Yeah, it kind of is funny.
Oh man.
Josh is like, damn it, I'm never talking to these people again.
Hey, I'm just saying, I'm looking outside this window and I see the trees get darker and larger. And all I can think of is
cool.
If Georgia wasn't so humid, I'd consider it. But man, that humidity is just killer.
Yeah, it's not fun.
The last thing I have is this title from an article that I don't think I remembered to link to. Amazon's Lord of the Rings teases a potential young Sauron. Like what? What? teenager Sauron walking around the countryside or something?
From what I've heard, it's going to be focusing on the forging of the One Ring and how he manipulated the elves, men, and dwarves by giving them their rings, etc., etc.
I don't think he was actually young even then, was he?
You know, in the cosmic scale of things, perhaps this was thousands of years before the events of Lord of the Rings, but I think young is a tough word to use.
Youngish.
Yeah,
800
younger
is the new 30.
That's right. Do you guys have any confidence that this is going to turn into something good, this Lord of the Rings series? I'll take that as a no.
I mean,
I hope it does, but I'm afraid that it won't. You know, boy, they sure are pouring a lot of money into this. Wasn't it like $1 billion?
Yeah, it's the biggest budget TV show ever. Is what I've heard. Bigger than Game of Thrones. So they're definitely doubling down on it. Yeah, they are. But the thing to remember, and that I hope they remember, is all of that money means nothing if the story isn't great.
Hey, while we mentioned Game of Thrones, just to be clear, George R.R. Martin's first TV work on what series? 1980s Twilight Zone.
Moonlighting?
Right.
No, 1980s Twilight Zone. Just saying.
Wait, was that it, or was it The Outer Limits in the 80s?
I am told that it was the Twilight Zone series first.
Who's your source?
Wikipedia.
Oh, okay. Well, that's probably right then.
Hey, it was before Beauty and the Beast, a underrated late 1980s series starring Linda Hamilton. Just saying.
And as soon as she left the show died.
No comment. No comment. But it existed, and George R.R. Martin did write most of it. So before Game of Thrones, that's where he got to start. Before he was even writing novels.
Well, if I remember correctly, Pete has left, but if I remember correctly, we have 2 prizes. One was that Cthulhu pin, and what was the other? His deck of cards. I forget what it was.
An Aleister Crowley set of tarot cards.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Yeah. That's right.
Don't mention that. Just have Pete send that to me.
I'll do what I can. If you'd like to be in the random drawing for that, send an email to Lovecraft eZine at gmail.com. Make sure that the word prize is in the subject. And if you would, in the body of the email, put what the prize is, like Cthulhu pen or Crowley playing cards, that kind of thing. If you also want to go on and tell us how awesome we are and how you could not possibly live without this podcast or the other eZine projects, then we'll accept that as well. So, all right. Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody, guys. Thanks for being on the show. Josh, nice to meet you in person, so to speak.
It's an absolute honor. I've always loved the Lovecraft eZine, so it's a real distinct pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. Well, we're glad to have you. It's Gallows Hill Magazine.com.
That's it.
So check March 31st, I guess a week from today, for the first issue.
That's right.
So, and speaking of support, I really appreciate especially all my patrons. I'd love to have more patrons. The base amount is $5 a month. I mean, you're going to pay less at McDonald's for, you're going to pay more at McDonald's for a meal, and this is just once per month. Just Google Lovecraft eZine Patreon, and you'll see the different choices there. And I can use all the support I can get. So thanks for being on the panel, guys. Everyone, thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.